you're welcome to.
Okay, thank you. So hello everyone and welcome to the third session of the day. So this is the second session on the topic of NIST Lightweight Standardization, and we will have 6 talks of 5 minutes each. If you have a question, please post it in the Tulip chat room, and we will ask all of them at the end of the session. So for this session, we have 3 moderators, so Florian Mandel, Léo Perrin, and myself. And without further delay, let's start with the first presentation. So the first paper is entitled Wedge and Authenticated Encryption with a Twist, and the talk is given by Raghavendra Roth.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Raghavendra Rohit, and I will briefly present our work, Wedge and Authenticated Encryption with a Twist. This is joint work with Reha Multaway, Guang Gong, and Kalikinkar Mandal. So let's start with the rationale of the Wedge design. So our first goal was to somehow reuse and adopt the initialization phase of the WG stream cipher for the authenticated encryption. So the WG stream ciphers are well studied in literature, and one of the big version WG29 was the round 2 candidate of the eStream competition, and most importantly, they use a single nonlinear feedback shift register for key stream generation, unlike Grain and Trivium, which uses a combination of LFSR and NLFSR. Our second our second main goal was to have achieved lower hardware footprint, and obviously we want good security bounds. Finally, we want to have minimal hardware overhead for tweaking the permutation to an independent WG-based pseudorandom bit generator, which has certain theoretical properties like full period and 2-level autocorrelation by design. So these are our overall goals. So coming to the round function of the wedge permutation, it is designed on extension field of f2 to the power 7. So the NLFSR consists of 37 7-bit words shown in green, 2 Bell-Gong permutation S boxes, and 4 newly designed SBS boxes shown in blue and yellow respectively. And for the linear layer, we have a symmetric feedback polynomial and some word-wise XORs, and there are some round constants. And we iterate this round function for 111 rounds to achieve good security properties. So for the security details, one may refer to our paper or full video. So now once we have a secure permutation, we use it in traditional sponge duplex mode for the authenticated encryption functionality. So here Wedge supports 128-bit key, 128-bit nonce, and 128-bit tag. So here we use a stronger keyed initialization and finalization phases. So for the initialization, we first load the state with nonce and key and absorb the key again via the read part and call the permutation 3 times. Then we process the associated data. Here we change the domain separator from 0 to 1. Next we do the encryption. This is normal to the sponge duplex construction, and the only difference is here we change the domain separator from 1 to 2. Then in the tag generation process, we again absorb the key and finally take the tag from 128 bits of the state. So absorbing key via read part here has 2 advantages. First, from the implementation perspective, there is the circuit is uniform throughout all the 4 stages. There are no need for XORs. And if you see this part carefully, this is somewhat similar to the suffix keyed sponges, the talk which was given by Bart on Monday. Plus, in the related key scenario, this has better security. For example, if an adversary injects a difference here, he has no control over the differences in K0 and K1 part. So coming to the pseudorandom bit generator functionality, so from the sponge, we can start with an initial secret key and output R bits of the rate after each call of the permutation. So in case of which, we can generate 64 bits after 111 rounds. But we want to have something which is more efficient. So What we do, we tweak the design of the wage round function by grounding some components of it and convert it into the WG stream cipher over F2 to the power 7. Then we do the initialization phase just for 74 rounds and output each bit in one clock cycle. So this has some certain advantages which are crucial for lightweight scenarios. For example, it has low power and energy consumption, low latency, and most importantly, it can be used an efficient source for generating random nonces for authenticated encryption. So this is the high level view how we convert the wage round function to the WG stream cipher. So this was the part which is not used in the WG stream cipher mode. We only add the trace function. So coming to the hardware performance, so we implemented the Wage in three different ASIC libraries, and for the comparison, we take the numbers from the round two candidates, which are implemented in the same technology. So for example, in ST micro 90 nanometer, Wage has an area of 2540 GA with a throughput of 535 megabits per second, and the area is much smaller than other candidates like Skinny, Gift COFB, and Sunday gift. So it's closer to SCON, but here the SCON implementation is serialized and compared to Wage, which is round wage. And the only exception here is Tiny Jumbo, which is around 31352. But in terms of security, Tiny Jumbo only offers 112-bit security, while for Wage it's 128. So I would like to mention here that at this point, since ASIC benchmarkings are not available, so fair comparison is a bit hard. So to conclude, we have proposed Wage, a sponge-based authenticated encryption, which is mainly designed for resource-constrained environments and in particular for ASICs. So the underlying permutation is very simple. It consists of Gallo NLFSR, two S boxes, a primitive feedback polynomial, and some word-wise XORs for diffusion. And it offers good security guarantees and it's hardware efficient. And finally, it can be easily tweaked to a pseudo-random bit generated based on a WG stream cipher. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for your talk. So we are moving now to the second presentation. So the title is Estate, a lightweight and low energy authenticated encryption mode, and the speaker is Ashwin Jha.
Thanks for the introduction. So this is a collaborative work with Avik Chakrabarti, Nilanjan Datta, Kwatemuk Mencias Lopez, Mridul Nandi, and Yu Sasaki. So the motivation of Estate comes from the Sunday AEAD mode, which is a MAC then encrypt design with OMAC like MAC and OFB based encryption. The mode has been shown to be non-misuse resistant and it has an optimal state size. So apart from the block cipher state, there is no additional state here. But there are two problems with Sunday. So first one is forgeable in RUP model. So you can easily forge this mode in the RUP model, as has been shown by Chang et al. In this year's FSC. And then there is a additional block cipher call in this mode, which is required to prepare the initial state. So our goal is to construct an AED mode that achieves this non-misuse resistance and optimal state size of Sunday. And additionally, we want RUP security as well as optimal number of calls. And in that respect, we present a state, which is again a MAC then encrypt type construction, where the MAC is done via FCBC now. So we use a tweakable block cipher instead of a regular block cipher, with these tweaks are used for two purposes. So first purpose is to generate independent instances of the block cipher, and the second purpose is to use them as a domain separator. And for encryption, we use the same idea of OFP encryption. In terms of security, we show that state achieves a better security notion or a stronger security notion of AE security called the AERUP, which was again introduced by Chang et al. In this year's FSC. And this can be viewed as a combined notion for privacy, integrity under RUP, and the pre-image awareness 1 or PA1 security. And what we have shown is that state is birthday bound secure under AERUP. So it achieves all three privacy, inter-UP, and PA1 security, while the total number of block cipher calls across all encryption and decryption queries is less than 2 to the n by 2. Okay, in terms of the NIST LWC standardization, these are some of the schemes which have been designed on MAC then encrypt paradigm. And among these, Sunday and state, they continue to be in the second round. And as you can see from this table, state has some advantages over Sunday with negligible increase in the state size. And this increase in state size is because of the is to store the tweak value, which is again very small. So we'll compare state with Sunday. So in terms of the primitive calls, again, as I said, state requires just A plus 2m many calls, where A is the number of associated data blocks and m is the number of message blocks. And Sunday requires one additional call to prepare the state. In terms of multiplication, so Sunday requires this multiplication by 2 or 2 square in the finite field for domain separation. And as I said, state requires uses tweak values to achieve this task. And so state is multiplication free. Again, state, we have shown that it's inter-UP secure, and Sunday is insecure. Uh, uh, our colleague Quatemok has implemented both Sunday and state in hardware, and what we have observed is that for short messages, this additional saving this additional call actually helps state to achieve a better throughput. For example, for 16 bytes, the throughput for Sunday AES is 945 Mbps, whereas for state it's 1251 Mbps, so an increase by almost 300 Mbps, or more than 300 Mbps here. And for longer messages, although the throughput is higher, for Sunday and state, both the throughput is comparable, but the area-wise, state is slightly better than Sunday. In fact, for GIFT, it's much better than Sunday. So the overall throughput by area ratio is better in case of state. Additionally, in the paper, you will also find that we have proposed a smaller version of state called s-state, which is smaller and more efficient because it requires it uses a round reduced primitive in the MAC operation. So the security margin is slightly less than state, but it's almost as secure as state. We have also given a discussion on the choice of tweakable block cipher. So we use a dedicatedly designed tweakable block cipher with short tweaks to make the construction efficient. And we have also given some additional benchmarking results with other constructions from CSER and NIST competitions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next talk will be on Spook, sponge-based leakage-resistant authenticated encryption with a masked tweakable block cipher, which was co-authored by a significant number of co-authors, among which François-Xavier Standard, who will give the talk.
Right.
Please.
You hear me and you see the talk, the slides?
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, with the 5 minutes I have, I will try to say a few words about the design of Spook and discuss a little bit the new results that we have. And for the design, I will mostly speak or only speak about integrity with leakage. The rest, everything related to confidentiality, is in the paper and in the long talk. So the goal of Spook, essentially what we wanted to do is to design a mode of operation that is both lightweight and has good features for side channel security. And for integrity, we wanted to reach the strongest possible guarantee, which is ciphertext integrity with non-misuse resistance and leakage in encryption and decryption, which means we cover all possible attack paths. And well, an exemplary application for that is secure software updates. And we know from past results that we can obtain this efficiently with a one-pass mode. And we can even tolerate an unbounded leakage of all the ephemeral secrets in the implementation if, as on the scheme below, we have a key generation function and attack generation function that are in blue, which means they are strongly protected against DPA. And this is kind of pushing towards this idea of leveled implementations, where different parts of the implementation will have different levels of security against side channel attacks, which is, of course, beneficial for efficiency. So if you want to instantiate that, essentially what you need is to choose the key generation function and the tag generation function. There are many options for this in the literature, and for Spook, we went for a masked tweakable block cipher for 3 main reasons, I would say. Maybe the most important one is that we wanted that all the overheads related to side channel security, they are based on implementation. They are not based on the primitive, which means that if you don't need side channel security, you don't pay anything or you pay very little for it, which is in contrast with, for example, using a leakage resilient PRF, where the overheads would be at the level of the primitive. And then we need to choose essentially between the tweakable block cipher and the permutation. We went for the tweakable block cipher, first because it has a smaller state, which means less AND gates, and that's interesting when you want to mask the design. And the second reason is that with the tweakable block cipher, we can use this nice inverse-based tag verification, where even this is this wide verification here. If you verify on the inverse, you can tolerate, you can have beyond birthday security even with unbounded leakage for this operation, which is in contrast with the forward solution. Good. As I said, I will not speak much about confidentiality or not at all. I just showed the full design. Essentially, the idea is that for the message processing part, we are going to use a permutation-based encryption, mostly because it's flexible and it allows us to generate several instances by playing with the weight and the capacitance. And then the next step, of course, is to design these components. So for the tweakable block cipher, we need it to be efficiently masked. So we went for a 12-round SPN, mixing 2 components, a 4-bit S-box with 4 AND gates, which is quite classical, so very easy to mask, and a 32-bit linear layer based on L boxes. And essentially the idea here is that we are going to have this operation working only with 32-bit operations that are available on ARM Cortex device or things like that. So it's going to be efficiently implemented both in software and hardware, and it has branch number 16. So combining that, we get a 128-bit block cipher that we call Clyde. And for the permutation, the idea was that we want to limit the overhead due to primitives. So we try to combine them as much as possible, and we essentially mix 4 Clyde ciphers with another linear layer, which is D. For Spook version 1, it was a near MDS matrix with a branch number of 4. For Spook version 2, it's an MDS matrix with branch number 5, and we discuss why this happens in the paper. Good, so based on that, what we mostly did in the task submission is answer this question of what is the cost of these 2 similar primitives. For this, we expected that the most critical case would be hardware. So we try to design an unprotected hardware implementation sharing as much as possible between Shadow and Clyde. Again, details are in the paper, but the good news is that these overheads, if you look at the overheads of the Clyde tweakable block cipher over the Shadow permutation, they are very limited. It's less than 10% in area, meaning slice of lookup tables. And it's nothing in registers and it's nothing in frequency. So essentially, the cost of these 2 primitives is quite limited. And the other thing that we did in the paper is to look a little bit more at what we need for the tweakable block cipher. So very summarized, what I said so far is in order to have side channel security, we need a strongly protected tweakable block cipher implementation. And previously, in all the works we did, it was modeled as leak-free, which is convenient, but of course, it does not capture security degradations that could happen in the typical case where DPA security is high enough, let's say, but not ideal, so it's not leak-free. So what we did to contribute to this problem is to introduce a weaker assumption called strong unpredictability with leakage for the tweakable block cipher. Here, the idea is that the adversary can query the leaking tweakable block cipher, and he has to produce a fresh plaintext ciphertext pair. And thanks to that, now applied to Spook, we can reduce the integrity with leakage of Spook to the strong unpredictability with leakage of the tweakable block cipher, and the fact that the permutation-based hash function that we use in the scheme is a random oracle. I will not have time to detail the bounds, but essentially the bounds are still good. They are still beyond birthday, but they are worse than with the leak-free tweakable block cipher. And what's interesting is we think this bound is possibly not tight and the random oracle is possibly not needed. So we think there are nice open problems to look at there. Leading to the conclusion. So at the mode level, Spook was really aiming for the best possible integrity with leakage and the best confidentiality with leakage that you can reach in one pass. At the primitive level, the components enable resource sharing, which we confirm with a hardware implementation. And we also have results showing that it can be, the tweakable block cipher is very efficiently masked. So really summarize, we think that the Spook design is competitive when it's unprotected, and it will significantly improve the state of the art when side channel security is needed. And we have other nice black box features that are detailed in the paper, and I will not discuss here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-François. We will now move on to the presentation of another candidate. So if you have questions, don't forget to ask them on the Zulip chat, by the way. So the next talk will be given again by Ashwin Jha. It's on From Combined to Hybrid, making feedback-based authenticated encryption even smaller. The virtual floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction again. So this is a joint work with Avik Chakrabarti, Nilanjan Datta, Snehal Mitra Gotri, and Mridul Nandi. So in this work, we look into a generalized rate 1 feedback-based AE mode. So which is shown here. So what we do is we encrypt the nonce n first to generate an initial value y0, and then from here onwards we take the input data. So for example, the associated data, the current output, say this y value y0, and some auxiliary state or auxiliary masking state s to generate the next input x. So these gamma and these rho functions, these are called the feedback functions. And additionally, what we can do is we can generate outputs. So for example, this ciphertext C0. So in general, in this, the design goal of these feedback-based AE modes has two parameters. First one is the state size. So we want to minimize the state size. So it can be easily seen that the only part that you can minimize or that you can work upon is the masking state, the auxiliary masking state. So we want to minimize the auxiliary masking state here. And another part that you can work on is the feedback function. So we want to simplify or optimize the feedback function. So there can be several different ways to simplify this, or there can be several views on how to simplify this. So we take the this road that we want to reduce the number of XORs, which seems to have some applications in the hardware implementation. Okay, so the first result that we show is a lower bound on the state size. So formally what we show is that for any rate 1 feedback-based AE mode with an additional state size of tau bit, there exists an adversary that breaks the construction with approximately 2 power tau queries. So for example, if you have n by 2 bit additional state or n by 2 bit masking, then the adversary can break the construction with approximately 2 to the n by 2 queries. So the most you can have is a birthday bound construction. And in fact, COFB by Chakrabarti et al., it achieves this lower bound. So it has 2 to the n by 2 query security, and it has an optimal state size of n by 2 of optimal additional state size of n by 2 bit. So the other part is what's remaining is whether we can simplify the feedback function or not. And remember that we want to simplify over the number of XORs. So in this regard, we propose HYNA, which is again a feedback-based construction. So it's an instantiation of feedback-based construction where the masking value delta is generated by is taken by from the upper n by 2 bits of the initial value y0, and we apply a new hybrid function, a new feedback function called hybrid feedback that we'll discuss slightly later. And the x0 value is here just the nonce concatenated with 0. Okay, just a small disclaimer here. So we use a slightly different way to update the masking values as compared to the NIST submission. So here you can see it's 2 delta, 2 square delta, and 3 into 2 power a minus 1 delta for the last block of the AD. So instead of this, in the NIST version, it's simply 2. So so this modification actually ensures identical AD and message processing and achieves a better hardware performance. So this is one of the reasons that we use this slightly different version of HYNA. And for the feedback function, so the high FB function in the HYNA is defined something like this. So what we do is we take the upper part of the message, XOR it with the upper part of the output state Y, and we get this get the upper part of the ciphertext, and the same ciphertext is fed as the next the upper part of the next input. And for the lower part, we take the lower part of the message, XOR it with the lower part of the output to get the lower part of the ciphertext. And for the input, we take the lower part of the message, XOR it with the current masking value, and we get the lower part of the input. So in the upper part, we apply ciphertext feedback, and in the lower part, we apply plain text feedback. So it's a hybrid between ciphertext and plain text feedbacks. Similarly, you can get the decryption version of this feedback. And another thing to note here is that the number of XOR count is equal to 3n by 2. So all these lines, these are n by 2 bit wide. So we have 3 XORs here. So in total, we need 3n by 2 bit XORs. In case of COFB, it's about 2n bit. So we actually save n by 2 bit XORs here. For the partial data processing is similar. So we need some padding if the message is not full. But apart from that, the processing is quite similar. So I won't go into the detail here, but apart from the padding, the processing is quite similar. So in terms of security, we show that HYNA is again a birthday-bound construction, birthday-bound secure construction. There is a factor of n here, so you can see that it's nQe by 2 to the n by 2 or n sigma v by 2 to the n by 2. But we believe that this is more of an artifact of our own proof approach, and probably it can be improved to simply QE by 2 to the n by 2 and sigma v by 2 to the n by 2. So we can show that HYNA is probably birthday bound secure. Okay, I won't go into the detail of the proof, so it can be found in the full version of this talk as well as in the paper. So here I conclude the talk. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move to security analysis of some of the candidates, and the next talk will be on VKeys in the rekeying paradigm application to Comet and Mixed-Feed, and Mustafa Karala will give the talk. The stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. Yes, in this talk, I will be talking about some of the attacks on some of the rekeying and feedback-based schemes, especially using weak keys. So an introduction, what's a nonce-based authenticated encryption? Informally, it's an algorithm that takes a unique nonce, a secret key, and it also takes associated data and message. Then it outputs ciphertext and tag. On the decryption part, it accepts the ciphertext, tag, nonce, and associated data, and either outputs an error if the ciphertext and tag are forged, or outputs the correct message. So what is a weak key? A weak key is a key for which the algorithm doesn't behave in this way, where, for example, the ciphertext is not uniformly random, or a weak key that allows forgery easier than a randomly chosen key. And usually, this number of these weak keys, if they exist, is small, and because we take the average security over a key selected at random, they don't affect the security so much. But one of the goals of the attacker is to increase the number of weak keys by a significant margin so that they affect the security for all keys. Now, if we look at the rekey and chain generalization of some of the feedback-based modes, we see that these modes, they consist of 3 phases. So first, we have a key derivation function, which takes the nonce and the key and outputs an initial vector and a session key Z. Then we have an absorb function, which takes the associated data and transforms the session key to a new value and transforms the chaining value to also a new value. The chaining value then is used to encrypt the message blocks, and it goes through a block cipher call each time. And for these block cipher calls, we need unique keys. So the session key has to be permuted for after each block cipher call. And what we show in this attack is that if this permutation has short cycles or fixed points, this can be considered as weak keys because they offer predictability about the internal state, the input and output of the block cipher. And if we find that there is a lot of weak keys, so we increase the number of weak keys, we can use it to mount an attack even without knowing that the weak key exists. And the difference between a rekeying-based scheme and a normal scheme is that for every message, we are selecting a new key, which means we are not taking the security over one key, but over many keys. So we increase the probability of having weak keys. And what happens is when we have this predictability, we can drop blocks from the message or add new blocks to the message that does not exist. And this allows forgery. And we show that for CA of P and Hyena and Comet, this allows attacks with data complexity of 2 to the power 64. And these attacks are covered by the security proofs of these schemes, so they do not threaten their security. But in the case of Comet, it's not just forgery. I will explain in a second. If forgery happens, it allows to master key recovery with the same complexity, which can be critical in some applications. For mixed feed, we offer a forgery attack, and we showed in the paper that there are a lot of weak keys, but we didn't give an exact bound for how many weak keys there is. We gave several examples. Then in a recent work by Laurent and Pernod, they show that actually the probability of such weak keys we present here is 45%. And the attack works with only 2 messages, each message consisting of 2 to the power 34 blocks, which means that mixed feed will not offer integrity if the messages are longer than 2 to the power 34 blocks. So we look at Comet. Why does this forgery
Did we just lose a speaker?
So I think something happened.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it working now?
Still here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see your screen. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was saying is that if the forgery is successful, it means your prediction about the inputs and outputs of the block cipher calls was successful, and you also know that the session key was a weak key. And because you have 2 to the power 64 candidates for such weak keys, this allows you to recover the initial vector in a set of 2 to the power 64 possibilities. But then if you look at the initialization function of Comet, the initialization function actually uses the secret key itself as an initial vector. So this reduces the space of the key to the power 64. Then when we attack the KDF, we can do the same thing again, 2 to the power 64 times, and we verify whether Z is a weak key or not. So with 2 to the power 65 block cipher calls, offline block cipher calls, we can exactly know what's the value of K with very high probability. If we look at mixed feed has a very similar design, except that the permutation used for the session keys is just applying 11 rounds of the AES-K schedule. So this is done by the designers to improve efficiency because this permutation is already performed within the AES cipher, so they can just take its output directly and use it within the mode. However, in the paper, we showed that we have at least 20 cycles. Each cycle has this length, and we give examples for these cycles. And shortly after, the designers provided an assumption that for any for any session key chosen uniformly at random, it will have a cycle of length L with at most this probability, and this will allow to prove the security. Subsequent to this designer, recently, as I said, Laurent and Pernoud show that they study the cycle structure of the AES-K schedule and show that this cycle length has a probability of 44%, and this allows forgery with 220 gigabytes of data. And this shows that the assumption is not correct. Finally, I would like to thank the authors, Laurent and Pernoud, because they identified an overflow bug that was originally in the original version of this paper, and it's updated on the ePrint version. Thank you.
Thank you. So the last talk of this session will be on the security margin of tiny Jambu with refined differential and linear cryptanalysis by many different people, and the talk will be given by Ferdinand Sibelius. Stage is yours.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let's begin. So we're gonna talk on about the security margin of tiny Jambu with refined differential and linear cryptanalysis. So first, tiny Jambu is a candidate in the NIST Lightweight competition. It's a work kind of like a sponge function. Only you see the permutation is a keyed permutation, so it's not a public permutation, and it uses two kinds of permutation: a p and a p hat. And in all the variants, the p permutation is much smaller than the p hat permutation. And so what we study in this work mainly is the small permutation, the simple p permutation. And it works like, and it's implemented like a nonlinear feedback shift register, where the B here is the key addition, and the only nonlinear component is this NAND gate. So at each one round, it's just one bit shift to the right, and you compute the most significant bit using this feedback register. And originally, the authors studied the differential properties of this function using a MILP model. So they look for and they simply look for the differential tray with the minimum number of active AND gates. And in this simple MILP model, every AND gate is considered independently, and every time there is at least one input difference that goes into the gate, then the gate propagates the difference with probability 1/2 or not. And every AND gates just are treated the same way. Only there's a known flaw with this, is that you don't take it into account correlation into the AND gates. And typically, it happens as soon as, for example, you have AB entering an AND gate and BC entering another AND gate. And if you have a difference active on A and C, but not on B, then both gates will propagate, either if B, the underlying value B is equal to 0, then both gates won't propagate the difference. And if B is 1, then both gates will propagate the difference. And the both case happens with probability 1/2. While in the simple model, you won't count this twice and say it propagates independently or not with probability 1/4. And what we do is do this analysis again, but taking into account this correlation. And typically, when it is in this case, we'll force the gate to jointly propagate or not, and only count this once as one single active gate. And why do we need that for tiny Jambu? It's because these patterns actually happens all the time. So when you see the shift register as it goes around, every value will be shifted to the right, and eventually the value that was in the 85 position goes into the NAND gate, and it shifts and goes again into the NAND gate with another value. So concretely, what happens? If you name A, B, C the 100th, 85th, and 70th position, then first B and C will enter the AND gate in the nonlinear feedback register. And 15 rounds later, you have that A and B will also enter the AND gate. And so you have this correlation happening really all the time in TinyJambu, and not taking into account this correlation leads to quite taking into account very bad differential trait, impossible maybe, and not even computing the probability correctly. So that's basically what we did, is just rewrite the model and rerun it, taking into account just that. And and the way we do this is not so complicated. So we keep all the constraints of the simple model, and on that we add a few constraints. So we had a variable we call gamma ABC that just track whether we are in the we're in the situation where the gate will be correlated. And then we add two other constraints. When gamma ABC is 1, so the gates are correlated, we simply forced the two gates to propagate jointly. And for the objective function we want to optimize, we simply subtract all value gamma ABC, because in the simple model, this will be counted twice. And so we do -1 every time they are correlated. So it's quite simple, and it's simple enough so that we can actually run the model on the full 384 rounds and check if there are indeed better trails or not. And so we did differential correct analysis with that. And we update a lot of number of the original submission, but I just give you the main results. So sorry. So for the full 384 rounds, we found a trail with 88 active AND gates, which is more than what the original differential trail on the original paper that they found, but we have 14 correlations. So this gives overall propagation. This gives overall a propagation probability of 2 to the minus 74. And here you have the trail, and we only consider truncated trails where we can only have active difference on the first words, because that directly gives an attack on the schemes. And what we also did is take the look for all the trails that have the same input and output and add them. That also wasn't considered before. And so overall, we could find a differential probability of 2 to the minus 70 point something. So that's quite low, but that's still over 64. So that's not contradicting the claim of the authors. Another thing we did is consider truncated rounds and see how big can we, how many rounds can we attack and have below 64 bits of security. And so we found that we could attack how many rounds? Sorry, I don't see. We found that we attack 338 rounds and have an overall probability of 2 to the minus 62. We could also do the same for linear cryptanalysis. We have exactly the same problem, and it can be solved exactly in a very similar way. And what we found is that for 384 rounds, where we can find this masking with a linear bias of 2 to the minus 41. So when you want to build a linear attack, it will be the complexity will be 2 to the minus 82 or 83. And this is also not contradicting the security claims, but that's also interesting. And we put restriction to have only the mask on these words, because that usually give an attack on the tag generation function. So to summarize our results, we did some cryptanalysis of TinyJambu to reveal some weakness. We used a refined model that just find highly accurately like differential and linear trait that we could verify in some cases with a more stronger model, or even by testing it. with the our conclusion is that the security margin of Tiny Jambu is smaller than we expected. Typically, in respect to the number of unattacked drones, we have 12% margin. And in bit complexity, we have less than 8 bits in data complexity for full rounds attack. And so, yes, we also found what can be do to mitigate this is to upgrade the number of rounds, right? So 384 maybe it's quite small. It already has small margin despite it's really generic attack, right? And probably we can improve this again. So I'll stop here. You have much more detail in the video and on the paper. And also, if you are interested in the code, the way we code the MIRP trails, or the way it's all on GitHub here. You have the link here and also on the paper. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now take some questions. So don't forget to ask those you may have on the chat. We already have some that were answered by the authors, but we will ask them live anyway so they can elaborate a bit more. Don't hesitate to ask your own. So first question was on the first talk on wage. The NLFSRs operate on 7-bit words. So why not use the same S-box everywhere instead of 2 different ones? And then why not use something like the inverse, which would have better differential properties?
So thanks, Leo, for the question. So to answer your first question, for example, if we replace the WGP S-box by inverse and then filter it through trace function, then we don't know whether we can get like the full period or not. So, but for the case of WGP, we know the theoretical proofs. For the second question, for the number of S-boxes, so the thing is, this is the only expensive part in our design in terms of hardware area. So if you replace all these all the other S-boxes by WGP, then the hardware area will grow. So we decided to have like something which is lightweight and whose the security properties are close to the WGP S-boxes. So that's why we have 2 S-boxes instead of same.
Okay, thank you. Then we have sorry. Then we have a question on Hyena from Damian. Have you investigated the hardware area economy when going from COFB to Hyena with the concrete block cipher? And what is the ratio of the saved area and the total area of COFB?
Yeah, so as I said on the chat, in the paper we have given the optimized hardware optimized implementation of Hyena with GIFT 128 and compared it with several other AEDs, including COFB with GIFT 128. And I think based on the results in the paper, the ratio will be around 1.5 to 2 times smaller. So Hyena, the optimized implementation, area optimized implementation is almost 2 times smaller than the available results for GIFT COFB. So this is what is from the paper. For more information, I think I have to talk with my co-authors, Avik, because he has probably implemented this in hardware. But based on the information that I have, I think it's the ratio is around 1.5 to 2 times smaller.
Okay, thank you. Then we had a question from Mustafa.
Yeah, the question was, yep. Sorry, do you think it is possible to fix mixed feed permutation without impacting too much the performances? So, for instance, by reusing AES operation?
The thing is, the design of mixed feed, I think the choice of using the permutation this way was to reduce the implementation cost. So you just take the output of the key schedule and use it inside the mode. And if you try, for example, to use a different lightweight cipher like Skinny or Gift or Present, the problem will be even more, because these ciphers, their key schedule is even weaker in terms of its permutation properties. Like if you look at Skinny, its permutation repeats every 16 rounds. So it will repeat after a few blocks. So one way would be to design the cipher, like to redesign the key schedule to have this property. To my view, this is not also good approach, because then this cipher will be only used within this mode, and it will not be good for other modes which require lightweight key schedule.
Okay, thank you.
So I see that Damian would like to have a bit more precision on the answer to the question on hyena. So in particular, are you including the size of GIFT 128 in that
yes,
comparison?
Yeah, so we actually include the size of the GIFT 128 as well, but probably so I think so the existing results for GIFT COFB, they are not probably as area optimized as implemented for HYNA. So that's why this ratio is higher than probably what is expected. But I think it will still be HYNA will still be a bit will still have better performance as compared to GIFT COFB in terms of hardware area. So if you see in the paper, GIFT COFB has a better throughput, but HYNA, because we are considering area optimization, so the throughput is slightly less as compared to GIFT COFB. But area-wise, we are gaining much. So we are gaining around 1.5 to 2 times in terms of area, even after including GIFT 128 size.
Okay, thank you. I have a small question on Spook on the candidate. So you proposed AEAD, sponge-based AEAD, well, permutation-based. Why didn't you also design a hash function?
Good question. I think we could with minimum change. We didn't, I guess mostly because we were focused on side channel security, and most of the efforts that we did at that point were about encryption, authentication, authenticated encryption. And yeah, since we wanted to use kind of stable results that were already published, we didn't add that. I think it could come with limited efforts.
Okay, thanks. André Schrottenloher is asking about quantum attacks. So several modes were presented during this session, and he is wondering if you had a look at quantum attacks being in the Q1 or Q2 model. So if any one of you guys wants to take up the question, or did you just not consider those? That's also a valid answer.
Yeah, so we haven't considered this thing in our analysis, but because the thing is, like, even for quantums, you need like bigger state and bigger key size, and but the requirement here. Hello. Hello.
Yep.
Yeah. So we haven't considered this in our analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and for state, I think I can say that state is probably not secure in the Q2 model, or the model where the adversary has a superposition access to the AEAD algorithm, because it uses a CBC MAC based MAC, which has been shown earlier to be insecure due to this Simon algorithm based attack, the period finding based attack. So state will probably it won't be secure in the Q2 model.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else who wants to talk about quantum attacks? So I'll take that silence as a no. I think we have discussed all the questions that are on the chat. Virginie, Florian, would you agree?
So maybe I have a question for Ferdinand. So you say, I think in the long version of your talk, that there exists another milk model which is more accurate, but which takes a lot of time to run and which is too slow to evaluate. So do you think you could maybe feed this milk model with the solutions that you obtain to be able to have something more accurate and maybe faster?
What we did in the paper is to first we look for good trails using the refined model, and then we verify it using the more complex model. Oh, okay. And that's also the way we did when we have the input-output. We could find many, when we look for many trails that goes from this input to this output, we use the more complex model because that's much more constrained. So it goes fast enough to look for all the trails that goes into this. So that's what we actually we did use lots the more complex model, but looking from zero, looking for good trace using the complex model is just not possible.
Okay, thank you. I missed this point.
So we still have 3 minutes to go, but if no one has any questions. So basically, if you have a question to ask the speakers of this session, it's you have to speak now or remain silent. Okay. So at a regular conference, I would be standing between you and the coffee break, and I would happily let you rush towards caffeine. Should we just wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. So let us thank the speakers of this session and all those who asked questions. And let's meet